Have you ever felt like something should be visible, but it's disappearing right before your eyes? Not because it's not there, it's because it's hidden. Every Christmas, BTS always seems warm, laughing, close, real. But for those who really pay attention, there's one detail that keeps repeating itself year after year. It's not noise. It's not big drama. It's just a small missing piece, right when Jimin and Jungkook are in it. Strange, isn't it? Because the more it cuts, the more it feels like something is being hidden. The camera moves too quickly. The editing feels too neat. And a moment that should be intact just disappears without explanation. The question now is no longer, is this a coincidence? But rather, why does the same thing keep happening ever since that Christmas? Today, we won't speculate. We'll reopen the missing piece, tracing the details that were missed. Since BTS's debut, the relationship between Park Jimin and Jungkook has been a constant topic of discussion among ARMYs. Not only because they are the magne line with immense popularity, but because there's an emotional dynamic that feels different, deeper, quieter, and often overlooked by the camera. But that's precisely where its power lies. Of all the moments that spark discussion, the Christmas season holds a unique position. Year after year, Christmas always presents itself as a warm, personal, and emotional time for BTS. But a closer look at the archives reveals one undeniable thread. Certain Christmas moments feel more private when it comes to Jimin and Jungkook. This article won't rely on empty rumors or overblown imagination. It's a thorough examination of video clips, live broadcasts, re-edit content, body language, and spontaneous reactions that have been consistent over the years. This is why many ARMYs refer to him as the confirmed Jikook, not through an official announcement, but through a continuity of behavior too consistent to ignore. Christmas has always been a special time for BTS. In their various content, they often share stories about family, childhood memories, gratitude, and hope. The camera is usually left to capture natural interactions, loose laughter, small jokes, and even warm silences. But when we focus on Jimin and Jungkook, there's a different nuance. Some Christmases feel normal, full of open interaction. But on certain Christmases, there's a strange visual distance, not an emotional distance, but a distance created by the camera and editing. This is where many ARMYs begin to wonder, why do certain parts of the most intimate moments feel hidden? Patterns never emerge from a single event. They form through repetition. In some of the early Christmas content, Jimin and Jungkook's interactions still appear quite free-flowing. But over time, a subtle but noticeable shift has occurred. The camera, which usually lingers for a few seconds on natural interactions, begins to move more quickly. A personal conversation is suddenly overshadowed by background music. The angle changes just as the two approach each other. These things may seem trivial, but for ARMYs who rewatch old content alongside new, these changes are palpable. It's not that Jimin and Jungkook have changed, but rather that the way they're portrayed has changed. One reason why Jungkook remains a constant topic of discussion is their consistent body language over the years. Jungkook often instinctively seeks out Jimin, with a brief glance, a tilt of the body, or a small, unconscious movement that seems to lean in. Jimin, too, displays similarly subtle responses, a gentle smile that appears only at specific moments, a brief, seemingly spontaneous touch, or a subtle change in expression. Interestingly, this body language is never overdone. In fact, because it's so natural, it's difficult to completely conceal. And perhaps that's why the camera often chooses not to linger. In some Christmas content, there are moments where the camera shifts precisely at the most crucial moment. Not before, not after, but precisely when the interaction feels most honest. Some ARMYs have noted that this shift often occurs when a Jungkook turns to Jimin with a soft expression. Jimin chuckles after Jungkook's comment. The two sit too close together in a casual setting. Is this a technical coincidence? Perhaps. But when this pattern occurs repeatedly, questions naturally arise. One of the most frequently discussed aspects is the difference between the original broadcast and the re-uploaded version. Some observant fans have noticed differences in duration, camera angles, and even audio in certain Christmas content. Some parts feel like they've skipped, as if conversations have been omitted. There are also transitions that are too quick for casual content. Interestingly, these missing parts often relate to interactions between Jimin and Jungkook. Not big moments, but rather small. Personal moments. While editing can erase images, spontaneous expressions still leave traces. In some Christmas clips, Jungkook's expression can be seen changing drastically when Jimin speaks, a softening gaze, a small, unconscious smile. Similarly, Jimin often displays more open emotional reactions when Jungkook is near. These expressions often appear for only a split second, but precisely because it's brief, it feels honest. Many armies believe that a particular Christmas period marked a turning point. From then on, the way Jimin and Jungkook were portrayed felt more cautious. This doesn't mean their interactions diminished. Quite the contrary, the closeness remained, but it was presented in a more restrained manner. Christmas, as an emotionally charged time, might have been considered too risky for overly candid displays. As global public figures, BTS live between two worlds, the personal and the public. Not everything needs to be shared, and not every closeness needs to be explained. If there was a decision to maintain a certain level of privacy, then the most sensible step would be to control the visual narrative. In this context, concealment doesn't mean denial. It could actually be a form of protection. When armies say that Jimin is confirmed, they don't mean an official label. It's an emotional confirmation, the result of long observation, repeated behavior, and consistency that persists over years. There's no single, isolated moment. There's a series of small moments that reinforce each other. Christmas after Christmas, the pattern continues to emerge. Precisely because it was never announced explicitly, this story lives on. It grows in silence, in missing pieces, and in glimpses of expression. For many fans, this feels more real than any forced narrative. Once we reopen those big questions, one thing begins to become clearer. This isn't about one clip, one Christmas, or one coincidence. It's about repeating patterns, and patterns never appear without reason. An unconsciously narrowing distance between them. A smile that appears not for the camera, but for each other. Things like this often go unnoticed by the casual viewer. But to ARMY, accustomed to reading their body language, the silence feels incredibly lively. And strangely, it's this silence that's most often left unsaid. We may never get an official answer, but from Christmas to Christmas, one thing has become clear. Jimin and Jungkook's closeness isn't just a fan-made narrative. It lives in body language, in the silences cut short by the camera, and in the small moments too honest to be fully revealed.